One of the things that I absolutely love about my wife, Erin, there are a number of things that I actually love about her, is she is an amazing cook. She's an amazing baker. She is amazing at all things. And when we very early on married, she just is confident in some of those skills at times too. She said, you know what, I make a really good turkey. I make a really, like Thanksgiving time, like that's like my jam. I really like making that. And I really want to bless you, Todd, with a turkey. And I'm like, man, that sounds great. And so if you've not made a turkey, it takes a lot of time and energy. And so she's got timers going off. She's coming, she's basting things over and over and over again, and like all these spices, and the house is just smelling better and better and better and better and better and better and better. And like I'm getting excited now, because who doesn't like fresh turkey? Unless you're vegetarian, then I guess that would be. But anyway, so the time comes, and we gather around the table. We've got Paxton and Preston there, our children, and Aaron is there, and it's just picturesque turkey. We're like, this is beautiful. I cannot wait. And so we pray, we give thanks. Aaron has done everything right. We take a bite, and I found myself in a really awkward position because it really was not good. And I'm like, dear Lord, what do I do in this moment? And so I'm like, chew slowly. So I'm chewing slowly and trying to think, like, when she asks me, how is it, how I'm going to respond to this. And the meantime, though, she's taking a bite, and she's like, oh, this is not good. It's just not good. I don't understand. And so she starts thinking through, like, did I do these? And she pulls out her clipboard with all of her notes. And like, yes, look, I didn't miss any of these things. It's just not, the flavor is just not right. Like, what is it? I did everything right. And then she goes, oh, it's the wrong bird. Like, what do you mean wrong bird? She's like, well, I usually use a butterball, but somebody tried to bless me with her own turkey that they had themselves, and like they gave it to me, and it just kind of looked weird, but it wasn't a butterball. It was the wrong bird. And so she's sitting there feeling like a failure, feeling confused, feeling just discouraged, but she didn't do anything wrong. She just had the wrong bird. And in our lives, I don't know about you, but sometimes we can walk through things and do nothing wrong, and still failure hits us. And the reality is maybe you were in a relationship and you did everything right. You were kind. You were gracious. You were praying for folks. You were walking really, really well with Jesus, and you were writing encouraging notes, and you were being faithful in all things, and that relationship came to an end. You're like, what did I do wrong? That's just the wrong bird. It's just the wrong bird. And that hits us, and that failure, no matter if it hits us because we're aware of it, we've done something wrong or not, those emotions are still with us of going, man, I'm confused, I'm discouraged, I'm frustrated. Another real quick story, little Todd, really little Todd. I've always been little Todd, but like really little Todd. My parents got me a bike. It was a yellow bike with a banana seat with really cool handlebars, but it was a little bit too big for me. But it was time for Todd to learn to ride the bike. And so training wheels come off, I'm able to get on, and I ride. And I'm riding, and the wind is just going through my face. I had hair, it went through my hair too. And I'm riding like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm zipping around the neighborhood, and they're like, Todd, it's time for dinner, come on in. And so I remember this. We were living in Richland, Michigan. Got off the bike, I came into the house, and I don't remember what we had for dinner, but I was like, can I pray? I just want to thank God that I was able to ride a bike today. Like that's just so cool. And so, yeah, so I led the prayer. It was really all about thank you for a bike and that I can ride it, and I'm awesome and amazing. And so ate dinner. Can I go ride my bike some more? Yeah. So I run outside, and there's the banana bike, yellow, with a banana seat. And I do everything that I did before, and I just can't. I get on. I'm like, oh, too far, fall over. Try it again. Too far. Another time, not quite far enough. I fall over because the bike it was too big. And I got so frustrated that as my parents came out to see their happy son riding this beautiful bike, they see me at the vacant lot next to our house holding that banana bike seat, getting ready just to shove it off of a cliff. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, the bike is all wrong. It was the wrong bike. It was too big for me. It wasn't the right time. And yet all of those emotions that come with failure hit me, even though I didn't do anything wrong. So sometimes we hit these failures in our lives, and it's just the wrong bird. It's the wrong thing. Sometimes we hit these failures in our roads. It's just the wrong time. It's the wrong bike. Wrong bird, wrong bike. Again, we see it in relationships. Sometimes we see it with a job. Like, man, I just really want this job, and I did everything right. I met all the qualifications for it. I had a perfect resume. I've got the right saturation of keywords that are in there. Like, this job is meant for me. I got an interview. I nailed the interview, and they just didn't pick me. And you don't understand why they didn't, because you did everything right, and you feel like a failure. Or maybe it's with sickness. Maybe, in your own life, you're like, man, I've taken so many precautions. I'm always washing my hands, sanitizing, and everybody who comes around me, I make sure they're doing the same things. I take all these precautions to make sure that I stay healthy. And I get sick. Well, what is that? I did nothing wrong. Point being, we all have moments in our lives where we experience failure. Sometimes that failure is we are fully responsible for it, but there are some times that failure it's like, no-fault failure, if you will. You've done nothing wrong. You just live in a broken world. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know those emotions when you fail and kind of how you're feeling? Well, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk through Luke chapter 5, and we're going to look at how does God respond to failures, to people who are suffering failures, whether they're no-fault failures or they're at-fault failures. All the emotions, how does he come through there? And what we're going to see, I hope that we see, is this, that, again, let me click it again. There we go. That Jesus uses failures. That's, if you want to know what we're going to talk about tonight, it's just that Jesus uses failures. And those spaces of failure, setback, God is at work. He's inviting us really to take a step with him. And what we're going to see is that God's going to realize, and he knows that during those moments of failures, what we don't need is time away to reflect on ourselves. We don't need to be self-absorbed during that time. What we really need is for health, and that's found in seeing him and living in step with the rhythms of his life and stewarding the gifts that he's given us. That those are the pathways to health, even through failure. So, with that, our plan for the evening is going to look like this. We're going to set the setting for you, just in case you didn't read ahead. That's totally fine. And then we're going to see how failures can be used to grow us. And then we're also going to see how Jesus uses failures like people who are failing in his kingdom work, which is really a beautiful, beautiful thing. But let's go ahead and set this up for us. In Luke chapter 5, verse 1, let's just read. Now it happened that while the crowd was pressing around him, that's Jesus, and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake Gennesaret. So here he is. It's the Sea of Galilee. Man, what's wrong with me, Todd? But you need to know just a few things before we go on. It's crowded. It's not normally crowded down here. Usually Peter is able to come in from fishing, and he's just kind of left alone. But not now. Jesus is there, and he's brought a crowd of people who are there. Jesus is incredibly popular with this teaching right now. It's early on in the Gospel of Luke, but he's already done some miracles. There's always been some healing, and he's been teaching in some pretty profound ways, and people are just dumbfounded by the authority that he has and by the wisdom and insight that he has. And so people are like flooding around to wherever Jesus is. They just want to be near him. And so just imagine, here you are coming down to the sea, and there's all these people around Jesus, and you're going, okay, that's great. An introvert like me, like run away, run away, run away. So Jesus is down there. What's the next portion of the setting there? Jesus sees two boats lying at the edge of the lake. But the fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing their nets. And you're like, you're highlighting these weird things, Todd, gotten out and washing their nets. It's important for us to understand the context of what's going to happen here. Peter, we know that he's been fishing all night, but it's the end of his workday. He is wrapping everything up. He has gotten out of the boat. He's cleaned up all the stuff from the fishing adventures. He's out of the boat. He's working on cleaning up the nets, mending them. Like, he's wrapping things up. It's been a hard night of work. Now, it's helpful. I don't know if it is for you, but it's helpful for me to kind of think about what were the boats like. In 1986, they found a boat at the Sea of Galilee. It's here on the right-hand side. the frame of it. It was a really cool discovery. They date it back between 40 BC to 40 AD. So this is like at the time of Jesus, a boat that was afloat there on the Sea of Galilee. They've done a reconstruction of it. So it's 27 feet long, 8.5 feet wide. They measure that it would hold, with the crew, 600 pounds of fish. Okay, that's a lot of fish. Keep that in mind as we're just setting the stage here. So, crowded shore, Jesus is there teaching. People are all over. They're pressing in against him. Peter is out of his boat. He's wrapped it up. He's washing the nets after a long night of work. And we know one other thing about Peter. We know this. He's going to respond earlier on, and he says, man, Jesus, listen, we've worked hard all night and caught nothing. Now, I should have highlighted worked hard. In the Greek there, that word is we have exhausted ourselves. Jesus, we are exhausted. Like, my tank is empty. I've got nothing. We worked all of last night. We gave it everything that we had. I'm a professional fisherman. I went out and I did what I knew to do, and we caught nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so here is Peter. This is his mindset as he is there. Crowd, Jesus, a whole lot of fishing overnight, nothing. He's exhausted. Has to have some feeling of a failure, because back in the ancient Near East, this idea of living day to day is very real for most people. And so this is not his hobby. He's not taking a break to go fishing. He's looking to feed his family. And he spent all last night, and he's come back with nothing. He's done nothing wrong, just the wrong bird. It's just the wrong bike. And so there has to be these emotions of just discouragement, confusion. And then that's the setting that Jesus is stepping into. So you've got Peter, I'm exhausted, frustrated, confused. I'm a total failure. I don't get it. I'm replaying all of what happened last night. Here's a crowd of people. Great. It looks like they're coming down and saying, oh, look, it's Peter. How was the fishing last night? Awesome. I really stink. Thanks for asking. Like, his failure's on the display for everybody to see. And here's this Jesus guy who shows up. So as Peter is stepping into this, again, failure feelings from no fault of his own. But we're going to see that Jesus is going to step in, and how does he work, and how does he use this failure? He's going to actually grow us. And I think this is just funny, really. For me, it is. And that's Jesus, got into one of the boats, which was Simon's. Just think about that awkward moment, right? Have you ever been just tired from a long day of work, and all you want to do is you just want to come home and you just want to sit and you just want to watch Netflix, or you just want to watch something on Hulu, or you just want to just sit in silence and just eat? Like, have you ever had just one of those days? Like, I just need to be left alone at the end of this. This is my space. I used to have them all the time. I still have them. The difference is I have a family now when I come home, and so I can't control that space. And it is always, when I feel that way, I come home, I sit down, I can guarantee you my children have a spidey senses of dad is exhausted and he's tired. This is the time to have an emergency. This is it. Let me come in. And this is it. And so, of course, my response is always just loving and kind, because when I'm exhausted and maybe just discouraged because I didn't get as far into whatever I wanted to do that day, those are the moments that I'm at my best. Not really, that's sarcasm. Those are moments when my patience are just really thin. And so just imagine, here's Peter, he's going through all these things, and then he looks up and he's like, that's my boat. Dude, this is a little awkward. You just came and sat in my boat. Like, can you imagine you walk out of here to go home this evening, and there's just some guy sitting in your car with a crowd of people around. Hey, how you doing, man? Like, what are you doing in my space? Like, this seems awkward and kind of comical to me. I think it's also interesting that Jesus chose which boat to get in, right? He comes and he sees other boats. I want this one. This is the one I want. I want Simon's boat. That's where I'm sitting. Because Simon's failure, I want that boat. Now, as awkward of a moment as that could be, Because again, these are real people. I hope when you read Scripture that you keep that at the forefront of your mind. It's really easy to come across this text and go, I've read it, I've studied it, I got it. I already know how the story is going to end. It's fine. 3 points in a poem, got it. And forget the humanity of people. To forget that there are emotions, that these people are real folks who have real fears, they have real frustrations, they have real joys, they have real pressures on their life. And sometimes it's wise for us as we're reading to just think for a moment, what is it like to actually be there? And Luke does something interesting because he presents that this is not the first encounter that Simon and Jesus have had. He's actually had a constant drip, and it's pretty cool when you look at this. If you were to flip back in Luke chapter 4, verse 31, and you can say, and Jesus came down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and he was teaching them on the Sabbath. And they were all amazed at his teaching because his message was delivered with authority. And it's going to continue. And in the synagogue, there was a man who was possessed by the spirit of an unclean demon. And I don't know what a clean demon would be, but with an unclean demon. And he cried out with a loud voice, "Leave us alone! What business do you have with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Jesus rebuked him and said, "Be quiet and come out of him." Demon throws the guy to the ground in the midst of the people and comes out of him without doing any harm. If you've ever been to Israel, you get to go to Israel, you get to stop at Capernaum. It's really pretty amazing. And you come in and they say, hey, here's actually, we found the foundations of the synagogue here that was in use at the time of Jesus. Here it is. And you're like, this is actually kind of cool. And then they're like, okay, so here it is right here, like in front of you. Now, if you'll just do this, right here, you've got Simon's house. We've been able to identify, this is more like, this is the house where Simon lived. Synagogue where Simon would worship, house where Simon would live. There's a great chance that Simon would have been there on several moments to hear Jesus teach. And so he's bumped into Jesus at least through his moments of worship. But not just that, what happens next? 38. Then he got up and left the synagogue, that's Jesus, and he entered whose house? Simon's house. Simon's like, dude, you took my seat at the synagogue, you took my seat at my house, now you're taking the seat in my boat. What's up with this, Jesus? But he comes into Simon's house, and Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. And standing over her, he rebuked the fever, and it left her, and she immediately got up and served them. So this is not the first interaction that he has had with Jesus. He's seen him in his place of worship. He's seen him at home. He has this rhythm of seeing, like, there's Jesus, there's Jesus, there's Jesus. I'm encountering Jesus before I encountered this failure. All along the way, I'm taking an input of who this Jesus guy is. He teaches incredibly well. He rebuked a demon. He rebuked a fever. I kind of know who this Jesus guy is just a little bit. I've been watching. I've been engaging. He's been in my home. I'm familiar with him. And more than likely, if you were to continue to read right after that, then as the sun is setting, the whole town and the region bring all of their sick, all their demon-possessed, and Jesus is just working. He's like casting all of them out. So Simon is right there in this proximity of all these things. This is not his first encounter with Jesus, who's sitting in his boat when he's tired, exhausted, and at his wit's end. And there's Jesus, in his boat. It doesn't negate the fact that he's tired and he's exhausted and feeling like a failure because he fished all night and caught nothing. And Peter, who's sitting there hanging out, we see him at his worship, we see him at his home. Jesus is going to ask Peter this. He's going to say, he got into the boat, which is Simon's, and he asked him, hey, could we just go out just a little? These people are really crowding around, like it's not great. Would you use your boat to take me out here? Okay, again, put yourself there. I worked hard all night. I caught nothing. I'm a failure. Like, I just cleaned everything up. I'm ready to go for tonight's work. And what are you wanting me to do? You want me to do what? This is incredibly inconvenient, Jesus. How dare you? Don't you know how tired I am? My schedule is full. You're interrupting what's happening here. Don't know what all the emotions were going through his mind, or if he was like, this is the dude who cast out demon, and he asked something from me. I'm in. I don't know. I know how I would respond, much like when I come home and my kids are like, hey, Dad, I got a problem. Like, are you serious? Out of all days, why this day? But do you see that he asked him? He doesn't demand. Which boat? Peter's boat. Peter, frustrated, defeated. Peter, I want to ask something of you. Would you just take a step with me? Just a little, just like, can we just go out here? And Peter responds, yeah, I'll be part of your production team. Because literally that's what he's doing, right? He's setting the stage so Jesus can teach the many. Peter says, yes, I will serve out of my resources, even though I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I will get my eyes off of myself and my frustration, and I will follow you, and I leave it all open to you. Yes, I am your production boy. This is it. Let's go, Jesus. And but he doesn't just go by himself. We're going to see he has a crew with him. So it's not just convincing Peter. Peter says, hey, you guys are with me? Let's go. Come on. And so they're, let's take him out just a little way. So he's, man, okay. Peter, use your resources for the kingdom. He's like, okay, let's do it. And then Jesus says something really crazy after that, right? So a little distance, and he's sitting there teaching. And the next thing he goes, he's going to ask him for a little bit bigger step. Now, when Jesus had finished speaking, he said to Simon, hey, let's put out to deep water. Let's let down your nets for a catch. Again, if you've read the study of this, you realize this. Peter is a fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter. Fisherman, carpenter. Carpenter says to professional fishermen, I think it's a great time. Let's go out there and throw the nets in. What do you think, huh? Not just any fisherman, tired, exhausted, knowledgeable fisherman. Carpenter. Jesus, we're not talking woodworking. We're talking my area of expertise. What do you think? Again, this is a Peter with feelings of failure and who's exhausted. And he's already served on production crew. Let's go a little deeper. Remember, it's crowded. I mean, remember, there's a whole crowd hanging out. Where's Jesus going to go? Are they going to go fishing? Don't they know? Like, what's wrong with Peter? Doesn't he know you don't fish at this time? There are no fish to be caught at this time. You fish at night. What is it? He is so crazy. What is he doing? So Peter's response is amazing. He says that Peter responded and said, Master, not Rabbi, because again, the audience who's being written to here to encourage and remind him of Theophilus, friend of God. Hey, Jesus is worth following because he's greater than John the Baptist, because Jesus is greater than the devil, and because Jesus is greater than your failures, is where we're coming in here right now. Theophilus, you need to know this is the Jesus that we're looking to pursue, and you need reassurance of your faith. You need to remember who Jesus is, greater than John the Baptist, greater than Satan, and greater than your failures. That's who this Jesus is. And he's writing this story to encourage him. And so he says this, Master, we've exhausted ourselves all night. And we've caught absolutely nothing. And these are the most powerful things that a human being could ever respond to the leading of Jesus. But this seems crazy and illogical, and it doesn't make sense to me or the world around me, but I trust you. I trust you. I will do it. I'll do as you say, and I'm going to let the nets down. Let me just say this. When the Lord comes in and convicts and nudges us to move, to step into someplace, an avenue to serve, whether it is a way in choices and rhythms of our lives that maybe are out of whack right now, anytime that the Spirit begins to move in us and convict us, we will always have a logical reason of why we should not do it. It's terribly inconvenient to wake up an extra 20 minutes to have time with the Lord. That's just, I need my sleep. He wants me to be at my best. I can't be the best employee that I can possibly be. I can't be the best student that I'm supposed to be. I can't do things to the best if I'm tired. So why would he want to, ask me for 20 minutes of my time when I could be sleeping? That's just inconvenient. Wait a second. You want me to actually give of some of the money that I have earned? It's my money. I've done all these things for it, and you want me, like you're laying on my heart to give? Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, because already I'm just having a hard time making it. And so, no, it would be very inconvenient for me to go ahead and give this up, because I'm saving this money for my house fund. It's terribly inconvenient. Always the resistance to the leading of the Lord, you're going to see self-convenience. The flesh is going to be, this doesn't make any sense to follow what you're saying, God. And you see Peter acknowledge this makes no sense, but how we see this maybe lived out in your life. Jesus is really clear about like physical boundaries in dating relationships, and yet worldly logic is like, hey, we got to see if we're physically compatible. I mean, that's what everybody's doing. So it just makes sense. Like, not everybody can be as physically compatible. Like, so maybe you're only a 7, and you actually need to know if you're a 7 or if you're a 10 to continue this relationship. So why would you honor Jesus with physical boundaries? Because he just wants to deny you the joy of really seeing if you are physically compatible. Let's just actually see if we're just compatible, so we should just live together beforehand, before ever getting married. Like, we should just do that because it makes sense. We got to make sure that our rhythms of life and our cleanliness, it just makes sense for us to try before you buy. Jesus doesn't know what he's doing. This set-apart holiness stuff, that just doesn't make any sense. We really want to help him out by making these compromises because it makes logical sense. You know, there's got to be limits to God's reach in your life. I mean, you can give him Sunday, and you can give him Thursday night. You can change how maybe you're approaching dating, but there's got to be limits. Like, he can't have access into what you watch. Because, I mean, it's all about the storyline. The rest of the stuff we just have to endure. Just as long as it's a good story, that's all that matters with what we take in. All that matters is if the storyline is good, we can justify taking in a whole bunch of other stuff. It just makes sense. And in the world we live in, we can't find good storylines without some of the extra garbage. So just, hello, Jesus, you can't cross those lines in my world. There's always these logical arguments that come back. Everybody's doing it. He doesn't see, he doesn't care. Like, we just begin to have these, like, anytime there's conviction from the Spirit, I can give you 3,000 reasons why this is just more convenient for me, which is evidence of, like, that's why that part needs to die. That's why it needs to be laid down. And that's what Peter does here. We worked hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and let down the nets. And now just look at the result here. If you've not read this story before, prepare to be amazed. If you have read the story before, you should be amazed. And when they had done this, they caught a great quantity of fish, and their nets began to tear. Right? Like, oh my goodness. We followed what he said. We threw things in, and the result, like, I was hoping for like 4 fish. And what is going on? The nets are tearing. What do we need to do? We need to ask for help. We need to bring some other people into this. We need to include others. And so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them because they needed help. And they came and filled both of the boats to the point that they were sinking. I showed you more than likely what that fishing boat looked like. It's estimated 600 pounds of fish per boat. And isn't it cool, the space that Peter gave, right? The space that he yielded to the Lord blessed him and filled the entirety of that space with something greater than what he could ever imagine. Even when Peter is like frustrated, even when Peter was annoyed, like, do you think right now in that moment when they're pulling things in, he's thinking about, oh, remember that failure? Do you think he's consumed with his self-absorption, or he's like, I have no idea what's going on, but this is amazing, and this Jesus dude is doing something crazy in my life, and I need to understand that more. We know that's his response because he sees the fish, and his response is this. But when Simon Peter saw this, he fell down at Jesus' knees saying, go away from me, Lord, for I'm a sinful man. Again, think about the ridiculousness of this, okay? Our nets are tearing. Here are the other people. We're filling the boats. They're starting to sink. There's chaos all over the place. And what is Peter doing in the middle of the chaos? What does he do? Is he managing the chaos? Lord. He's on his knees before Jesus in the middle of the chaos. Get away from me. I'm a sinful man. I'm other than you. You are so much greater than what I am. In the middle of the chaos, where do you turn? Where do I turn? My own intellect, my own intelligence, like, let's just go after this. This is how I'm going to solve the problem. Or is it, Lord? That's Peter's response. That's crazy. Fish flying all over the place, hitting him in the face maybe. Lord, go away from me. He's praising him. You are other than what I am. I am a sinful man. I'm not like you. That moment, where is his focus? It's on Jesus. It's not on his failures. It's not on the confusion or the frustration that he's experienced. It's not even on the blessing that he's received. He's like, you matter most. His focus is fully on Jesus. And go away from me. Lord, you were bigger than me. I'm praising you. And then Jesus just gives him assurance. Remember, he started, fished all night. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I caught nothing. Oh, everybody's seen my failure. Here's Jesus. Oh, you want me to go out a little? Okay, I'll take a step. Oh, I'll take another step with you. And all of a sudden, it's like, I am with the other. Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. I can't. And what does he said? Jesus says to Simon, hey, listen, Simon, calm down. Don't fear. Don't fear. Isn't that cool of Jesus? He doesn't go, actually, Simon, you're right. You are sinful. Like, really. I've been keeping notes. And so, Simon, let's just go through all of your sins and let me shame you and let me guilt you and let me just list them one by one by one by one. Let me just squash you. What does he do? He's like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's an incredible Jesus. Do not fear. God uses Peter's failure of a night of those feelings of failure of I'm exhausted and I tried everything and I failed. He used that as an invitation for him to redirect his attention to Jesus and take a step with him. Take a step with him. Take a step with him and bring healing and growth in Peter's life. And so if you or I were in the middle of this place right now where we're feeling like failures, maybe it's because, it just happened to us. We did everything right. It was just the wrong bird. It was just the wrong bike. You need to know that Jesus is sitting there and he's inviting you and I into a life of recovery and blessing by simply saying, just look at me, take a small step. Just take a small step. Now, he also uses failures for kingdom work. And this is incredible. I mean, truly, it's incredible. He's not sitting there saying, you better be perfect in all areas before I can use you. He's like, no, dude, you're a hot mess, Peter. Don't fear, but I got plans for you. Don't fear. Jesus said to him, do not fear. From now on, you will be catching people. Now, that's not like go catch and hunt them like these fish to destroy. It's you will go and you will rescue. I'm going to show you, Peter, where to go. I'm going to show you where to cast your net. I'm going to show you how to share the way, the truth, and the life. I'm going to show you how to live. Come with me. Because from now on, no longer are you running after fish. I have kingdom plans for you. Let's run after to rescue and seek and save the lost, because that's why the Son of Man came. And I think it's pretty amazing his response, right? This conversation happens on the boat. Get away from me. Don't fear, man. I got a different plan for you. Well, let's get to shore, all these fish, all these things. When they brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. I'm yours. The boat, I'm leaving the abundance of the blessing that you had right there. I'm not let me just go sell the fish first. It's like, no, you matter most. I understand that you've given me a new purpose. This is a really large step, right? A large invitation. And the cool thing is, and I've done not a great job of this, but the pattern in this pericope, we see Peter constantly going, here's an invitation, yes, Lord. Here's an invitation, yes, Lord. Here's an invitation, yes, Lord. You want to not have failures turn you inward, to have you be so self-consumed, just wander around in this deadly trap of why me, why does this have to happen? And over again, you just can't move on because you're just stuck because I just don't understand. I did everything right with this relationship. I did everything right with this job interview. I'm just this miserable person because I just don't understand why all these things. You want to be free of that. Jesus is saying, just look at me and take a step. Take a step. Take a step. Take a step. That's what you see in here. How do we recover from failures? Look to Jesus, take a step. And it's interesting that it came through serving. And that's really nice. We could sit there, and I don't know about you, I'm like, okay, that sounds neat. That's really nice of God to do that for the no-fault failure. Wrong bird, wrong bike. Like, Peter didn't do anything wrong. All of a sudden, here it is. But what about when we really have at-fault failures? Like, we intentionally thwart things. We consciously make choices to be offensive to God. Like, certainly those failures receive something radically different. I wish we could find just a different example of somebody who actually did this. Like, I wish there was an example. Oh, wait, there is. There's this guy named Peter, right? Right, if you were to look just a little bit further in Luke 22, I'll read here a little bit from 54 on. Jesus has been betrayed, okay? Like, Jesus has gone through teaching amazingly, doing amazing miracles all over the place, looking to seek and save the lost. He is coming to clearly explain, like, this is the way for life, and people reject that. He's betrayed by one of his friends, right? And there's a sham trial that's happening, and Jesus is at his lowest point of his life. And they're like, we need to kill this Jesus guy, we need to kill this Jesus guy, and anybody associated with him. Now, they arrested Jesus and they led him away. They brought him to the house of the high priest, but Peter, he was following at a distance. And after they kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter was sitting among them, like, just, well, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder what's going to happen. And a slave woman, seeing him as he sat in the firelight and staring at him, said, this man was with him as well. Peter's like, no way. That Jesus guy, I don't know nothing about him. And then he denies it. And a little later on, happens again. I am not the one that you think that I am. Third time is usually adding some abusive cursing language just to prove that he is not one of those Jesus followers. And so he sits there and he remembers the rooster crows, and he remembers that Jesus said he would be denied 3 times by Peter. And he's like, oh my goodness, I just did this. I chose to do that. And he's just weeping and he's distraught because that failure was an at-fault failure. And when you look at how does Jesus respond to that at-fault failure, does he say, oh, well, that one means you are now fully disqualified? The first I could overlook was accidental. This was intentional. No, it's really a beautiful story, and it should resonate a little bit with us here from John. You have to go to John because he picks this portion up of the restoration of Peter in chapter 21. Jesus is resurrected. We could just spend it forever there, but Jesus is resurrected. And things are just kind of confusing, and so Peter does what Peter does. He's like, I'm going to go fishing. I don't really know what's happening, so I'm going to go fishing. You guys want to go fishing? Let's go fishing. So they go, and they hang out on the Sea of Galilee, and there's some folks who are with them. And they fished all night in verse 3. They fished all night, and they caught nothing. This is my area of expertise. I know what I'm supposed to do. What's going on? I don't understand these things. And when the day was now breaking, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples didn't know that it was him. And so Jesus said to them, hey, children, hey, y'all, y'all have any fish? And they answered, no, we're exhausted. We worked hard all night, and we caught nothing. Oh, hey, why don't you just cast your net out? This is the wrong time. Fine. Whew. The abundance of fish in the net, huge. Peter, what does he do? Get away from me, Lord, for I'm a sinful man. Is that what his response is? Peter tucks his clothes, dives into the water, swims frantically. I'm coming to Jesus. It's Jesus. I need Jesus. There's no fear because he'd been told, do not fear. You don't need to fear me. Come towards me. I'm here. And Peter comes, even though he has let him down. And he's like, here I am. And Jesus is like, man, Peter, that's awesome. Man, I got some fish here already. But do you have any of your others? And so Peter sprints off and he grabs some of the fish and comes back. Yeah, I got it. He's trying to almost make it up to Jesus, but he's just so excited for this time. And Jesus is like, just calm down. I know that you betrayed me. I understand that you intentionally went against me. I get it. It was an at-fault failure, Peter. I understand. But just, man, do you love me? And he's like, yes, of course, you know I do. Hey, tend my lambs. Peter, do you love me? Yes. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yeah, Lord, you know I do. He's like, I know. Will you tend to my sheep? Peter, you need to know that you've been able to go wherever you wanted to go, but that's not going to be the case from this point forward. We're going to lead you, and you're going to be led in the way that you should go, even including the end of your life. But Peter, I'm not done with you, because Peter, you're going to be the one that's going to give a message on the day of Pentecost, declaring the incredible beauty of the gospel, and thousands are going to respond to it. Peter, you're going to lead this church. You need to know that Jesus uses failures. He uses failures. And so if you're sitting here today just going, man, I've experienced failures and I'm just tempted to sit there and go, it's all about me. Like, what did I do wrong? I'm so stupid. How could I have done that? Whether it's an accident, like a no-fault failure, wrong bird, wrong bike, or whether it's an intentional failure, like I can't believe that I actually did that. None of it shocks Jesus. And what he's trying to do for you and for me is to get our eyes off of ourselves on something bigger, which is himself. And one of the best ways to do that, he says, hey, just come and serve. Just take a step. Like, this is such a small step. Come join my production team. Just row the right, just the boat. That's great. Use what you've been given, what's been stewarded to you, to take just a step. Is it convenient? No. Is it the worst possible time when he showed up in Luke 5? Absolutely. Did it matter to Jesus? Because he's not really concerned about my convenience or my fatigue. He's most concerned that my eyes are directed towards him and I begin to image him and I don't fall victim to this whole self-pity, self-focused stuff that failure brings us into. And he says, I want you to be free of that. And how do you get free? Get your eyes off of yourself, get your eyes onto me, and take a step. And service is one of the greatest ways to do that, to begin to say, I am yours. It doesn't make any sense, but as you say, Lord, I'll do it. I'll cast the net. I'm going to take this. And so as you're sitting there, if you happen to be in that state right now where you know that you have screwed up so bad, the thing you said you would never do again, you just did. He can still use you. He wants to use you. You haven't disqualified yourself from being of kingdom use. But he's asking you, take a step. Take a step. Get your eyes off of you. Get them onto him and take a step. Because through those failures, Jesus is at work to grow us, to mature us. And even though we are all failures, he is still at work through us to expand his kingdom. A lot of words, a lot of time. I apologize. There's just a little bit of things here to apply. If you've suffered from failure, and I know all of us have, whether it's a no-fault failure or whether it's intentional rebellion, I know that if I were to walk around and ask you, how have you failed this week? How have you failed Jesus this week? We are so prone to be like, oh man, I've messed up all over the place. And if that's all that we ask you, how have you failed? How have you failed? Like, that focus is all on ourselves. That's why I think some of the accountability things that we do is so messed up, because we gather together for accountability and we're like, did you sin? How did you sin this week? How many times did you sin this week? Well, you shouldn't sin like that. You need to try harder. The focus is totally on you. I think proper accountability is you gather together and you say, man, what has fascinated you about who Jesus is? How have you taken a step to serve him? What does that look like in your life this week? And if you have responses and conversations over that, you can get to, how have you messed up? But you're going to be like, I don't understand, but there's been victory because you've had your eyes off of yourself and onto the King of Kings, the Lord of the Lords, the one that you know controls all things. And because he's sitting there and he's saying, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So accountability should be all about, how are you being fascinated with Jesus this week? What has he done like in your life that you're like, that's incredible? Have you even acknowledged that he's there and that he's near? Are we letting our failures eat our lunch? And so if you have been suffering from a failure, my encouragement, the application for this week would be, get your eyes off of yourself, get it on to Jesus, and look to respond to his invitations to serve, to step, to take a tangible step. Will it be convenient? No. Will you maybe be exhausted? Yep. Is he just looking to push you over the edge? Nope. He's looking to have you and I break the strongholds, to walk in the freedom from the power of sin that he has already given us. He wants us to walk in that. He wants us to enjoy that. And that happens when we stop looking at ourselves and we look to him. Second thing, man, get involved in kingdom work. We are created to serve. He came and he served, right? The night that he was going to be betrayed, what did he do? He girded up, knelt down, washed feet. the exact representation of the nature of God, served. We are called to image God. We are created to serve. You want to see your faith take off and start to grow? I cannot encourage you enough. One of the very practical ways to take steps of maturity is to serve. And it seems so simple. Moving a chair, helping with production. Did you know, like, some of us sit there and we go, like, production's just weird, although it's kind of interesting that the whole booth is almost shaped like a boat, but that's a whole other thing. Like, we can get overwhelmed. There's buttons and there's knobs and whatever else. I just don't know how any of that works. And so we can just be like, we just dismiss ourselves. And I was talking with Steve, and I was like, hey, well, like, what do you need back here? Like, what would be the perfect candidate? He's like, the perfect candidate, like the very first thing, if there's anybody who could be here by 4:30, because we need people to help us even that time at 4:30 to help with some of these things. Or if anybody could be here by 5, like if they can be available and they're able to be here, that's it. The knob turning, that can all be taught and it won't be all dumped on them at once. There's a nice process. But the largest requirement isn't knowledge, it's simply availability of your schedule. And he knows that it's a challenging thing. 4:30 and 5, that's early. He knows that. He knows it's a sacrifice. He knows, and so does the team back, that they know that because they're here doing that. And I don't say that to guilt you, but man, you want to grow? Take a step, serve. I don't even know how I'm gifted. Are you available? Just give it a try. Maybe it's connect team. Maybe that's a way that you want to dive in and say, I can say hi to people when they're coming in. Man, I can give a high five when they're coming through. I can look and say, how was your week? And then like, oh, your answer was just different. Like, hey, can we just step aside? And I'm okay if other people go through without being said hi to, but tell me a little bit more about that. Can I pray for you? Maybe that's your jam. We would love to have you serve with us this way. You need to know, after the service, after tonight, or at the end of the night, we're going to have a thing that we call Plugged In Thursday. And there are opportunities to get more information about how you can serve here. I say this and I want you to believe it. These are not things trying to like guilt you in here like if we're just desperate, like if you don't show up, it's all going under. If nobody shows up, we'll go with what we have. I never want you to serve out of guilt, but I don't want you to miss the beauty of serving and allow these logical things of, man, I just, feel discouraged right now. Man, I just feel like it's inconvenient. And I'm just a little bit tired. I don't want those objections to keep any of us, myself included, from just taking a step with Jesus by serving. Again, for your advancement and enjoyment of the beauty that he has given us. Did you notice that? I mean, man, they're like, just Todd, be quiet, and I will be quiet after. I really will be quiet after this. But did you see that in the text? Jesus invites, Peter responds. There's a co-working going on there, right? That's how our maturing in Christ happens. He's already saved you because of the work of the cross. If you have trusted Jesus and said, man, I'm a hot mess, I'm broken, there's nothing I can do to ever save myself. Everything I've tried has not worked. I need you to fix me. And that's what you said you did. You came and you died on the cross to give me new life. And you've said yes to that. You've trusted that. In that moment, you are a new creation and you are secure forever. You have hope and you have a renewed purpose. And that is to image God. It's actually the same purpose it's always been, but now you're empowered to be able to do that. That's safe and secure forever. The enjoyment of the life that he is giving you, that's called spiritual maturity. And we grow in that. It's a cooperative work. He calls, we step. He calls, we step. And most of his calls and the steps are sometimes really confusing. That's too easy. That's too simple. Or it's really simple and it's really terribly inconvenient. I'm good. And the cool thing is, even if we do that, he still loves us. He still loves us. So just hear that call as a call. It's an invitation to engage in serving so we can move towards maturity. Let's just pray. God, thanks for this day. I used way too many words. I talked way too many times. Lord, I thank you that you love us in spite of ourselves, Lord. I thank you that you give us something greater than ourselves to think on. Thank you that you desire us to walk in freedom. Freedom from the guilt and shame that we have, from failures that we experience, Lord. I thank you that you've made it really pretty simple. And I pray that that simplicity would not trip up any of us in this room, myself included. Lord, I've not arrived. There are areas, Lord, in me that you're calling me to serve. Would I not be so bamboozled to say that I'm just tired, I can't step into that, Lord? Would you speak clearly and nudge me the ways that I should go, and would I respond in a way that honors you? Lord, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for this group of people who serve so incredibly well in so many different ways. This is a ministry, Lord, that you have used to just encourage so many by their heart of service. And so, Lord, really, I trust you with how you're going to use each of these people. You will deploy them, how that best looks to you, Lord. If that involves Junction, we celebrate that. Lord, these next few minutes as we step into a time of just responding and worshiping, Lord, we would be amazed at the fact that we do not have to fear and we have a way of escape from those just destructive thoughts that consume us.